They came at dawn, not with fire or fanfare, but with silence so complete it felt like the universe itself had decided to hold its breath. One moment, the night sky over every major city was the familiar scatter of stars humanity had named and claimed for millennia. The next, those stars simply vanished. Not exploded, not dimmed, replaced by an endless, perfect black that pressed against the windows of apartments, observatorius, and bunkers alike. No warning, no declaration of war, just absence. Captain Elena Vasquez was in the middle of a routine supply run to the lunar relay when it happened. She'd been arguing with her co-pilot, Marcus Mac Riley, about whether the new coffee synth was worth the extra power draw standard bullshit to keep the nerves from fraying on a 6-hour haul, when the forward view screen flickered and went dark. Not a glitch, not interference, the stars were missing, every single one. Jesus, Mac whispered, fingers frozen on the throttle. Elena didn't answer. She was already pulling up every sensor feed, every backup telescope array, every deep space probe still talking to Earth. Nothing. The cosmic microwave background was there, faint and mocking, but the visible universe had been erased. Billions of light years of light, snuffed out like someone flipped a switch. Earth's emergency channels lit up within minutes. Panic, confusion, prayers in 100 languages. Governments tried to spin its solar storm, experimental weapon test gone wrong. Mass hallucination from some leaked neuroagent, but astronomers knew better. Telescopes didn't hallucinate, satellites didn't conspire. The stars were gone. Then the message arrived. It wasn't broadcast, it wasn't encrypted. It simply appeared on every screen capable of displaying text, in perfect, unaccented English or Mandarin, Arabic, Spanish, Swahili, whatever the local default was. The same 12 words, repeated calmly, like a bored receptionist reading from a script. Humanity has been deemed non-viable. Your species will be preserved in stasis. The galaxy is reassigned. Do not resist. No signature. No face. No explanation beyond those 4 sentences. The message looped once, then vanished, leaving only static and the sound of people screaming. Elena stared at the blank screen long after the words disappeared. Her hands were shaking not from fear, she realized with distant surprise, but from a fury so pure it felt like her blood had turned to plasma. Non-viable. Preserved in stasis. Reassigned. They were being evicted, not killed. Not conquered. Evicted like roaches in an apartment someone finally decided to fumigate. The galaxy, every habitable world, every nebula, every scrap of real estate between the spiral arms had been auctioned off, and humanity didn't even get to bid. She slammed her fist on the console hard enough to crack the edge. They think we're going to just go quietly. Mac looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Elena, they took the stars. The actual stars. What the hell are we supposed to do? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled up the nav charts, useless now, but still there. The old routes, the trade lanes, the places humanity had clawed its way into existence. Sol system, a single yellow dot in a sea that used to be infinite. Now it was all they had left, and then she laughed. It started small, a sharp bark that made Mac flinch, then grew until she was doubled over, tears streaming down her face. Not despair, not hysteria, something fiercer. They gave us the stars to die quietly, she said when she could breathe again. We're going to throw a fucking party. Mac stared. You're insane, maybe, but I'm not going into stasis like some museum exhibit, and neither are you. She opened a channel to Earth wideband, unencrypted, every frequency she could reach. The message she sent was short, raw, and unmistakably human. This is Captain Elena Vasquez, Soul Freight 47. They want us gone. They want us quiet. I say we make some noise. If you're hearing this and you're still breathing, find a way to fight. Find a way to live. Find a way to remind them why they should have killed us instead of trying to put us in a jar. We're not done yet. Vasquez out. She cut the transmission before anyone could respond. Didn't need to. The seed was planted. Across the planet, in basements and bunkers, in boardrooms and back alleys, people heard her voice. Some cried, some raged. A few, maybe more than a few, smiled. The same dangerous smile Elena wore now. The aliens, whatever they were, had made one critical mistake. They assumed humanity would accept being preserved. They assumed we valued survival over pride. They assumed we feared the dark. They were wrong. In the hours that followed, the first acts of defiance began. Not grand fleets launching into battle, there was nowhere to go. Not heroic last stands, there was no enemy to see. Small, stupid, gloriously human things. A kid in snow polo hacked the global weather grid and made it rain fireworks over the city for 3 straight hours. A retired Marine in Texas fired his grandfather's antique rifle into the empty sky until the barrel glowed red, screaming every curse he knew. In Mumbai, a street musician played the loudest, most defiant raga ever recorded, amplifiers cranked until windows cracked. On the dark side of the moon, a maintenance crew rigged every exterior light to strobe in Morse code, "Fuck you," and in orbit aboard the half-finished Mars Cycler Habitat 1. A group of engineers who'd been told their project was cancelled opened the emergency vodka stash and started building something they called the loudest damn beacon humanity ever made. They didn't have weapons, they didn't have ships, they didn't have stars, but they had spite. And spite, it turned out, was a renewable resource. Elena watched the feeds coming in grainy cell phone videos, drone shots, hacked satellite imagery and felt something uncoil in her chest. Not hope exactly. Hope was too fragile. This was certainty. The galaxy might belong to someone else now, but the story of how humanity went out, that still belonged to us. She turned to Mac. "Get me a course for Earth. Full burn." He hesitated. "We're not rated for atmospheric re-entry in this rust bucket. Then we'll make it work." He grinned, slow and reckless. "You're really doing this?" "Yeah," she said. "We're throwing the biggest goddamn going-away party the universe has ever seen. And we're not leaving until the neighbors complain." As the engines roared to life and the ship began its suicidal plunge toward the blue marble below, Elena opened a new channel, one she'd never used before. The private frequency reserved for the old black project, CumsNet. The one the governments pretended didn't exist anymore. She didn't know who was still listening, didn't know if anyone was, but she spoke anyway. "This is Vasquez. If you've got anything left, any prototype, any black-budget toy, any half-finished nightmare, you've got about 48 hours to dust it off, because we're not going quiet. We're going loud. And if you're one of them listening in, good. We want you to hear this. We want you to remember the sound. Because when the lights come back and then, you'll know exactly who turned them back on. Humanity sends its regards." She killed the channel, then she cranked the external speakers to maximum, patched in the old rock playlist she'd kept for morale runs, and let the opening riff of Sweet Child O' Mine scream into the void. The stars were gone, but the music was just getting started. And somewhere, in the perfect dark beyond Sol's heliopause, something ancient and vast pause ascendant, for the first time in eons, felt the tiniest flicker of uncertainty. The ship shuddered as it punched through Earth's upper atmosphere, flames licking the hull like hungry ghosts from Elena's past. She gripped the controls, sweat beading on her forehead, while Mac muttered curses under his breath, recalibrating shields that weren't designed for this kind of abuse. They were falling like a meteor, a streak of human defiance against the empty void where stars once mocked their ambitions. Elena's mind raced back to her childhood in the dusty sprawl of New Mexico, where her abuela had pointed at the night sky and whispered stories of ancestors who crossed oceans and deserts on nothing but hope and spite. "Somos sobrevivientes," she'd say. "Survivors," with a glint in her eye that dared the world to prove her wrong. That was before the corporations turned the skies into highways, before Elena enlisted in the Solar Guard to escape the grinding poverty of the border towns, only to watch her unit get shredded in the Belt Wars over asteroid mining rights. She'd lost friends, they're good people, reduced to frozen debris orbiting Jupiter because some exec in a suit decided their lives weren't worth the fuel cost. Now, as the ground rushed up to meet them, that old rage bubbled up again, mixed with something sharper, betrayal. Not just by these invisible alien overlords who'd yanked the cosmic rug out from under humanity, but by her own species. The ones who'd sold out early, the elite who debuilt their arcologies and bunkers while the rest of us scraped by on recycled air and dreams of Mars colonies that never materialized. "Hold on!" she barked at Mac, as the ship groaned and leveled out over the Atlantic, skimming waves that reflected only the pale glow of city lights below. They touched down hard in an abandoned airfield outside Miami, the landing gear buckling but holding just. Smoke poured from the engines, but Elena was already unstrapping, grabbing her sidearm and a duffel of emergency gear. Max stumbled out after her, face pale but eyes alive with that same reckless fire she'd seen in pilots who stared down death and laughed. He wasn't just her co-pilot, he was the closest thing she had to family since her sister Maria vanished in the Venezuelan uprisings a decade back. Maria, with her fierce idealism and homemade drones, fighting for land rights against the agrocorps, Elena had promised to get her off-world to a fresh start on Luna. But the wars came, and promises turned to ash. Now, in this starless night, Elena felt that loss like a fresh wound. Maria would have loved this chaos, would have been the first to rig explosives from kitchen chemicals and broadcast manifestos to the void. As they hunkered down in the derelict control tower, patching into underground nets that buzzed with frantic chatter, Elena's come pinged with responses to her earlier broadcast. Not just acknowledgements plans, a hacker collective in Berlin was reverse engineering the stasis signal, turning it into a feedback loop that might jam the aliens' tech. Engineers in Tokyo were repurposing fusion reactors into makeshift EMP cannons, drawing on old Cold War blueprints dusted off from digital archives, and from the Antarctic outposts, whispers of a hidden fleet prototype warp drives buried under ice since the failed Exodus project of 2047, when humanity's first attempt at interstellar travel imploded in scandal and sabotage. But amid the ingenuity, the cracks showed. Elena scrolled through messages laced with doubt, fear, accusation. Who put you in charge? One read, "This is suicide." Another, "My kids are scared, why fight when we could negotiate?" She leaned back against the cold concrete wall, the weight of it all pressing down. Leadership wasn't something she'd sought. It had been thrust upon her like a live grenade. Back in the Guard, she'd been the one to question orders, to push back against missions that smelled of corporate greed, disguised as exploration. That's how she met Mac, during a raid on a pirate outpost in the Trojans, where he'd saved her ass by hotwiring an enemy shuttle while under fire. They'd bonded over shared scars, his from a childhood in the flooded ruins of New Orleans, where hurricanes had taken his parents and left him feral, scavenging tech from drowned cities. "We don't quit," he'd told her once, over cheap synth whiskey in a Zero-G bar. Quitting's for the dead. But now, as the first alien probes appeared on radar, sleek, silent orbs descending like judgment from the Black Elena's resolve, wavered. Not from fear of death, but from the gnawing guilt of dragging others into her personal vendetta. What if this party she was throwing ended in massacre? What if humanity's famed resilience was just a pretty lie we told ourselves to justify the suffering? Mac noticed her silence, handed her a ration bar. "Penny for your thoughts, Cap," she snorted. "Worth more than that now, with the economy tanking." But she opened up, voice low in the dim light of their flickering screens. "I keep thinking about Maria. She believed in something bigger, justice, not just survival. These aliens, they didn't just take the stars, they took our shot at redemption, at proving we're more than squabbling apes on a rock." Mac nodded, his own eyes distant. "Yeah, lost my brother in the floods. Kid was 10, thought he could swim to higher ground. I built my first bot after that, to warn folks about rising waters. Thought tech would save us. But here we are, aliens deciding we're obsolete." Their conversation turned raw, vulnerabilities spilling out like coolant from a breached line. Elena confessed her doubt. Was this defiance noble, or just ego? Mac admitted his anger masked terror, not of dying, but of being forgotten. Another nameless casualty in humanity's long list of tragedies. Yet in that sharing, something solidified, not blind optimism, but a gritty pact. They'd fight for the messy, flawed beauty of human connections, the betrayals that taught forgiveness, the losses that fueled innovation, the moral quagmires that forced growth. As dawn broke, false and starless, reports flooded in of humanity's counterstroke. In the Sahara, nomad hackers launched solar-powered drones, swarming the probes, overwhelming them with viral code adapted from ancient malware. Off the California coast, submarine crews repurposed deep-sea mining rigs into harpoon launchers, snagging orbs and dragging them into abyssal trenches where pressure crushed them like tin cans. And in the heart of Siberia, a rogue AI descended from outlawed military sims awakened, its algorithms churning through petabytes of data to predict alien patterns, whispering strategies to resistance cells worldwide. But the cost mounted. Cities went dark as stasis fields activated sporadically, freezing pockets of population in eerie, timeless bubbles. Elena watched helmet cam footage of a family in Lagos caught mid-embrace, their faces locked in surprise. It hit her like a gut punch, hidden emotional anchors. Memories of Earth, not as a battlefield, but as home. The scent of rain on hot pavement, the chaos of street markets, the quiet solidarity of strangers sharing stories under neon lights. That's what they were defending. Not territory, but the soul of a species that turned pain into art, betrayal into bonds. Internal conflicts raged within her. Should they prioritize saving the frozen or striking back? Mac argued for the latter, his voice edged with old grief. "We save who we can by ending this." But Elena saw the moral tightrope. Vengeance could corrupt as surely as surrender. As they mobilized a ragtag convoy toward a rumored black site in the Rockies where whispers promised experimental weapons that bent spacetime, she felt the weight of choices. Allies emerged with their own scars. Dr. Li Wei, a physicist who'd lost her wife in the AI purges of 52, now channeling sorrow into quantum disruptors. Sergeant Omar Khalil, a veteran of the Middle East water wars, whose faith clashed with the godless hubris of alien overlords, yet found common ground in human dignity. Relationships deepened amid the ruins. Alona's tentative trust in Lee's genius, Mac's brotherly protectiveness laced with unspoken affection, Omar's quiet wisdom tempering her impulsiveness. Betrayals surfaced too, a turncoat governor in Europe, seduced by promises of personal stasis exemption, feeding intel to the void. It fueled Elena's fire, reminding her of corporate sellouts who'd doomed colonies for profit. Yet humanity's ingenuity shone through, kids in Manila fabricating EMP grenades from scavenged e-waste, elders in Kyoto drawing on ancient Bushido to train guerrilla squads, artists in New York turning stasis fields into holographic memorials, projecting defiant messages skyward. As their group reached the Rockies facility, alarms blaring under the perpetual night, Elena uncovered the site's secret, a prototype starseeder meant to terraform distant worlds but repurposed as a beacon to punch holes in the aliens' veil. Activating it meant risking everything, drawing the overlords' full wrath. But as explosions rocked the base and probes descended in force, Elena stood firm, her team's faces illuminated by console glow. This wasn't just survival, it was a declaration. Humanity's downfall, maybe inevitable, but their resistance, eternal. And as the cedar hummed to life, cracking the black curtain with pinpricks of artificial light, Elena whispered to the ghosts of her past, "Some was sober VV ain't cheese." The void trembled. The Rockies facility shook like a beast in its death throes as the starseeder finally ignited. A spear of white-hot plasma stabbed upward through the mountain, punching a ragged hole in the perfect black sky. For the first time in weeks, artificial starlight flickered in defiant pinpricks born from human desperation rather than cosmic indifference. Elena stood in the command bunker, watching the monitors flare with feedback. The alien veil wasn't just cracking, it was bleeding. Data streams flooded in, spectral signatures shifting, gravitational anomalies rippling outward from soul-like ripples in a pond someone had just dropped a boulder into. Somewhere out there, whatever passed for alien command was noticing. Good, let them notice. But victory tasted like ash. The Cedar's power draw had overloaded half the facility's fusion cores. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off corridors filled with screams. Elena's team, now down to 37 from the original 100, who stormed the place, raced through smoke-choked halls, dragging wounded, hauling salvaged gear, trying to reach the surface before the mountain collapsed in on itself. Mac was ahead, carrying Dr. Lee way over one shoulder like she weighed nothing. Lee's left arm hung limp, burned to the bone by a plasma feedback arc. She'd been the one to override the safeties, the one who'd whispered, "Forgive me," before hitting the commit key. Now she was fading, muttering equations no one else understood. Elena caught up, pressed a field dressing to the wound. "Stay with us, Doc." Lee's eyes fluttered. "The beacon. It's broadcasting. They hear it. They're coming faster." Elena didn't ask who they were. She already knew. The probes weren't toys anymore. The first wave had been scout-sleek, curious orbs that drifted like jellyfish. What followed was surgical. Black geometric shapes, larger than cities, materialized at the edge of the heliopause and began systematic disassembly of everything humanity had ever flung into space. Relay stations vanished in silent flashes. The half-built orbital ring around Earth cracked like an eggshell under invisible pressure. Worst of all, the stasis fields expanded. Not randomly now, targeted. Whole cities blinked out of time. Beijing frozen mid-rush hour, New York's Times Square locked in neon eternity. Lagos markets caught with vendors' hands outstretched for payment they'd never receive. Billions preserved. Yes, but preserved like specimens in amber. Elena's come crackled with Sergeant Omar Halil's voice, hoarse from smoke inhalation. "Vasquez, we've got incoming." Not probes. Something bigger. Gravitational shear just tore a hole in the stratosphere over the Pacific. "It's descending," she patched into the surviving satellite feeds. What she saw made her stomach drop. A lattice of obsidian triangles, kilometers across, unfolding like origami made of night itself. At its center, a sphere of absolute darkness, no reflection, no emission, just a hole where reality refused to be. The thing didn't attack with weapons, it simply arrived, and physics bent around it. Ships caught in its influence crumpled inward, metal folding like wet paper. Atmosphere peeled away in shimmering sheets. And then the message came again, not on screens this time, but inside every skull still capable of thought. A voice that wasn't a voice, calm, patient, ancient. You were offered mercy. Preservation is kindness. Resistance is cruelty to yourselves. Cease, or we will unmake the cruelty. Elena staggered, clutching her temples. The words weren't English, weren't any language, yet everyone heard them perfectly. Mac dropped to one knee beside her, blood trickling from his nose. "What the hell was that?" "Them," she rasped. "Talking. For real this time." But the real horror wasn't the voice. It was the traitor who answered. Governor Harlan Vossformer, head of the North American Continuity Council, the man who publicly denounced Elena's broadcast as reckless terrorism, stepped out of the shadows of the bunker's rear corridor. Flanked by 6 black-clad security contractors, rifles leveled, Voss looked almost serene, uniform crisp despite the chaos. "Captain Vasquez," he said, voice carrying over the alarms. "You've done enough damage." Elena's hand went to her sidearm. Mac was faster, already drawing. Omar and the others fanned out, weapons up, standoff in the flickering red emergency lighting. Voss raised a hand not in surrender, but command, "Lower your weapons. This ends now." "You sold us out," Elena spat. "You fed them intel. You let them target the stasis fields on civilian centers." Voss's expression didn't waver. "I negotiated terms. Preservation for cooperation. The species survives. The troublemakers don't." He gestured at the monitors showing the descending lattice. "That thing out there? It's the executor. One per sector. When it finishes calibrating, it will fold this system into null space. No pain, no memory, just cessation. Cleaner than stasis. Kinder than whatever madness you're planning." Elena laughed, bitter and sharp. "Kinder? You sound like them. Maybe I do. Maybe they're right." Voss's eyes flicked to Lee, still slumped against Mac. "Your doctor's beacon woke something older than stars. It's not angry, it's disappointed. Like a parent realizing the child will never grow up." He stepped closer. "Stand down, Elena. Let me transmit the surrender code. You'll be preserved with the rest. Your sister's already in stasis." "Yes, Maria. Found her in a rebel cell in Caracas. She's safe, quiet, waiting." The name hit like a slug round. Elena's vision tunneled. Maria alive, frozen, safe. The temptation was immediate, visceral. Give up. Let the galaxy have its way. Join her sister in the long dream. No more fighting, no more loss. Max saw it in her face. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't you dare." But the doubt was there, gnawing. Around them, the mountain groaned. Rock cracked overhead. The executor's shadow was falling across North America. Now satellites reported daylight dying where the lattice passed. People in the streets of Denver looked up at an encroaching night that moved. Some ran, some knelt. Some kept filming, stubborn to the last. Elena thought of her abuela's stories, of crossing borders with nothing but will. Thought of Mac's brother drowning because no one built the warning system fast enough. Thought of Lee's wife, erased in a purge Elena herself had once followed orders to enforce. Thought of every promise she'd broken, every friend left behind, and she thought of the kids in Manila still throwing rocks at drones, laughing while they did it. She straightened. "No deal," Voss sighed, almost regretful. "Then you force our hand." His contractors opened fire. The bunker erupted. Elena dove behind a console as rounds chewed concrete. Mac returned fire, dropping 2 in the first exchange. Omar charged, knife out, tackling a third. Lee, somehow still conscious, crawled to a secondary terminal and began typing one-handed, blood-smearing keys. Elena rolled, came up shooting. Voss ducked behind a pillar, calm as ever. "You can't win this." "Never could," she shouted back. "But we can make it expensive." Lee's voice, weak but steady, beacons modulating feedback loop. "I can overload the executor's core if we get a direct line of sight burst." Elena glanced at the surface access shaft 200 meters up, through collapsing tunnels. "We need to get topside." Mac grinned through bloodied teeth. "Elevators out. Stairs it is." They fought their way upward in a nightmare of smoke, falling rock, and muzzle flashes. Omar took her round to the shoulder, kept moving. Mac carried Lee again, refusing to let her go. Elena covered their rear, emptying magazines into shadows that kept coming. Halfway up, the mountain gave a final shudder. A section of tunnel caved in behind them, sealing Voss and his remaining men below. Or so they hoped. They burst onto the surface under a sky that was no longer black, but bruised purple, lit by the executor's lattice pulsing like a dying heart. Wind howled. Static electricity crawled over their skin. Elena helped Mac prop Lee against a boulder. The physicist pointed at the Starseeder's emitter array, still jutting from the ruined peak like a broken finger. "Need to reroute power. Manual override. Point it straight at that thing." Elena looked at the distance 300 meters of exposed ridge, under fire from descending drones. She met Mac's eyes. He nodded once. No words needed. They ran. Drones swooped, energy lances searing the ground. Elena zigzagged, firing from the hip. Mac hauled Lee, using his body as a shield when beams came too close. Halfway there, Lee went limp. Mac stumbled, went down hard. Elena skidded back, dropped beside them. Lee's eyes were open, staring at nothing. "Tell her. Tell the stars." "We tried," she breathed. Then she was gone. Elena's sob was short, furious. She lifted Lee's body gently, carried it the rest of the way. At the emitter, she laid her friend down like a sacrifice. Hands shaking, she followed Lee's final instructions, rerouting cables with a combat knife, bridging circuits with spit and prayer. The array groaned, realigned, power surged, a second beam lanced out, thinner but fiercer, striking the executor's central sphere. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then cracks spider-webbed across the obsidian, light trio light, angry and golden leaked through. The lattice screamed not sound, but a pressure that crushed eardrums and made teeth ache. Pieces began to flake away, dissolving into sparks that drifted upward like fireflies. The sky tore open, real stars distant, cold, indifferent peeked through the wound, humanity's stars. Stolen back, if only for a moment, Elena sank to her knees beside Lee's body. Mac collapsed next to her, breathing hard. The drones faltered, veered off course. The executor listed, folding in on itself. But Elena knew it wasn't over. This was just the first blow landed. The galaxy was vast. There were more executors, more voices in the dark, more traitors waiting for their moment. She looked at Mac. We bought time. He nodded, exhausted but unbroken. Time enough to plan the next party. Somewhere far below, in the buried bunker, Governor Voss clawed his way out of rubble. His cum was still live. He whispered into it, voice steady despite the blood on his face. They damaged one, but the network remains. Send reinforcements and tell them. Humanity still refuses to be quiet. Above them, the stars' real stars shone down on 2 battered humans and 1 fallen friend. The night was no longer perfect black. It was bruised, bloody, and full of promise. The war had just learned how to bleed. The executor crumpled inward like a black hole devouring itself, its lattice fracturing into shards that burned up in Earth's atmosphere like a perverse meteor shower. For a fleeting moment, Elena and Max stared at the sky as real stars distant, mocking pinpricks reasserted themselves through the tear in the veil. But the victory was hollow, a gasp before the noose tightened. Alarms wailed from their comes. The alien response was immediate, merciless. Not one executor, but a fleet dozens materializing at the system's edge, their shadows eclipsing the returning light. The voice echoed again in every mind, colder now, laced with what might have been exasperation. Your interference is noted. Preservation protocol revoked for non-compliant elements. Unmaking commences. Elena's knees buckled under the psychic weight, but she hauled Mac to his feet, his face a mask of blood and grit from shrapnel wounds. Lee's body lay cooling beside the emitter, a stark reminder that genius couldn't outrun death. We have to move, Elena rasped, voice raw from smoke and screams. They staggered down the ridge, the mountains still quaking from aftershocks, toward the hidden evac tunnel where the remnants of their team waited. Only 12 left now, Omar clutching his bandaged shoulder. A handful of engineers and fighters who'd followed her broadcast into this hell. The tunnel led to humanity's last stand, as they'd grimly dubbed it, a fortified bunker complex deep in the Rockies, pieced together from old NORAC relics and black-budget labs. It was supposed to be a rally point, a nerve center for the resistance. Now it felt like a tomb. As they sealed the blast doors behind them, the ground trembled anew. The fleet was closing in. Probes swarmed the skies like locusts. Stasis fields blooming across continents, whole nations vanishing into frozen silence. Reports trickled in from surviving pockets. Sydney's harbor iced over in mid-wave, Moscow's spires locked in eternal snow, Rio's favelas silenced mid-carnival drumbeat. Billions gone, not dead, but worse, erased from the fight. Elena slumped against a console in the command room, the air thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and overheating circuits. Matt collapsed beside her, his breathing labored, one eye swollen shut. That was it, Elena. Our big swing. And we barely scratched one. She didn't respond, her mind fracturing under the strain. Flashbacks hammered her. Maria's last holocall laughing about drone hacks before the line went dead. Abuela's frail hand pointing at stars that promised freedom. The Belt Wars where she'd watched a squad mate vent into vacuum because orders said hold position. Now those stars were back, but they brought no salvation, just witnesses to extinction. Omar approached, his face etched with quiet despair, prayer beads clicking in his hand. The Cedar's signal is out. Other systems might hear it, but here, we're the bait. He was right. The bunker was besieged. Alien constructs towering walkers that unfolded from the executors like mechanical arachnids marched on the mountains, their steps cracking earth like thunder. Energy lances scorched the landscape, vaporizing forests and turning snow to steam. The bunker's defenses fired back. Repurposed railguns spat hypersonic slugs, EMP bursts, fried incoming drones. Minefields erupted in geysers of dirt and fire, but it was attrition. Ammo dwindled, power flickered, wounded piled up in the medbay, moans echoing through vents. Elena pushed to her feet, ignoring the fire in her ribs from a cracked bone she hadn't noticed. She addressed the room, faces gaunt, eyes hollow but unyielding. We knew this might be it. No retreat. No surrender. We hold until the signal draws help, or until we make them pay so dear they regret ever looking at Sol. Murmurs of agreement rippled, but doubt festered. In the corner, a young engineer named Riley, barely 20, with tattoos of forgotten constellations, whimpered softly, clutching a photo of her family, now stasis frozen in Seattle. What if no one comes? What if we're alone? Elena knelt beside her, voice steady despite the storm inside. Then we die human. Loud, defiant, better than quiet in their jars. But privately, the weight crushed her. Psychological edges frayed, sleep deprivation turned thoughts to sludge, every shadow a traitor, every silence a betrayal. And betrayal came, as it always did. Governor Voss's voice crackled over an intercepted channel. Live, somehow escaped the cabin, now broadcasting from a mobile command vehicle flanked by alien escorts. Fellow humans, he intoned, smooth as oil. Captain Vasquez leads you to slaughter. Join me. Accept unmaking with dignity, or preservation for the worthy. I have coordinates for safe zones. The words wormed into minds, amplified by the alien voice. Two of Elena's team, exhausted, broken, slipped away in the night, heading for Voss's signal. Gunfire echoed in the tunnels as loyalists stopped them. One died. The other begged for mercy before a bullet ended his pleas. Trust shattered like glass. Elena executed the survivor herself, hand steady but soul screaming. No more, she whispered to the corpse. Mac pulled her aside later, in a dim storage room amid crates of rations they'd never eat. You're unraveling, Elena. That wasn't you. She rounded on him, eyes blazing. Who am I then? The hero, the savior. I'm just a freight jockey who talked big. And now everyone's dying because of me. He grabbed her shoulders, ignoring his own pain. Because of them, not you. You gave us a choice. Fight or fade. But his words rang hollow. Physical limits hit harder. Food ran low. Water recyclers failed under siege strain. Wounds festered without meds. Omar lost his arm to a shrapnel infection, refusing painkillers to stay sharp. His faith the only anchor as he manned a turret, reciting verses between bursts. Riley rigged a final sabotage, overloading the bunker S-core to create a chain reaction that might take out an executor if it got close enough. Suicide run, she said flatly. But it'll light up the sky. Elena nodded, the plan settling like lead in her gut. Their only shot, draw the fleet in, detonate, punch a bigger hole in the veil, buy time for any distant listeners. But it meant no survivors. As the walkers breached the outer perimeter, pounding the doors with rhythmic inevitability, Elena gathered the remnants. 11 now, faces smeared with soot, bodies trembling from adrenaline crash. This is the endgame, she said, voice cracking for the first time. We blow it all. Go out swinging nods. Grim smiles, but inside Elena broke. Visions of Maria, frozen forever. Mac's unspoken love, wasted. Abuela stars, indifferent. Nothing left but spirit, a raw, bleeding will to defy. The doors buckled. Alarms screamed terminal breach. Walker's shadows loomed through cracks, energy humming like death's whisper. Elena's finger hovered over the detonator. For humanity, she murmured. The room held its breath. Something must change now, or nothing would. The blast door splintered inward with a deafening crack, shards of reinforced alloy flying like shrapnel from a grenade. Elena's thumb pressed down on the detonator, her heart a thunder in her chest. Every nerve screaming farewell to a world that had already half forgotten them. The command room lit up with the glow of overloading circuits, the air humming with the promise of annihilation. Riley's rigged core surged, power cascading through the bunker's veins like liquid fire, ready to erupt and take the encroaching walkers with it in a blaze of human defiance. But then nothing. No explosion, no white-hot end. The hum peaked, then flattened into an eerie silence. The alarms stuttered and died. The walkers outside froze mid-stride, their energy lances flickering out like candles in a gale. Elena blinked, fingers still jammed on the button, confusion crashing over her like a cold wave. What the hell? Mac muttered, pushing up from his defensive crouch, his good eye wide with disbelief. Omar lowered his rifle, beads slipping from his bloodied hand. The 11 survivors exchanged glances, fear twisting into wary awe, regret already nipping at the edges of their relief. Had they failed? Was this some alien mercy, a final taunt before unmaking? Then the voice returned, not in their skulls this time, but broadcasting from every speaker, every device, even the dying consoles. It wasn't calm anymore. It cracked with something new. Urgency. Panic. Cease. Cease all actions. You have breached the quarantine. The simulation is compromised. Evacuation protocols engaging. Simulation. Elena's blood ran cold. The word hung in the air, recontextualizing everything, the vanished stars, the stasis fields, the executors, like a puzzle snapping into a horrifying new shape. Quarantine, not eviction, not preservation, containment. Humanity hadn't been deemed non-viable, they'd been locked away. She staggered to the main console, slamming keys until fractured feeds came online. Outside, the walkers weren't attacking, they were retreating, folding back into the latticed ships that now hovered uncertainly above the Rockies. Cracks spread through the sky, not from damage, but from dissolution, the veil peeling away like old paint, revealing not just stars, but a galaxy teeming with lights, alien worlds, fleets, civilizations, and something else. Echoes of human signals, old and faint, bouncing back from the void. Mac grabbed her arm. Elena, look. He pointed to a secondary screen where Lee's beacon data scrolled endlessly. It wasn't just a signal, it was a key. Dr. Li Wei hadn't died rigging a bomb sheet unlocked a door. Her final modulation had pierced not an enemy's shield, but a barrier humanity itself had helped build, or been forced to. The voice spoke again, fragmented now, as if the speaker was fleeing. You do not understand. The quarantine was for your protection and ours. Humanity is the anomaly, the destroyer. We gave you the stars to die quietly, because awakening you would unravel everything. Hit Elena like a gut punch. Destroyer? US, but the feeds confirmed it. Historical data packets flooded in unencrypted as if the collapsing simulation couldn't hold secrets anymore. Eons ago, humanity hadn't clawed its way to the stars. It had burst forth like a virus. First contact wasn't peaceful. Humans, with their boundless ingenuity and relentless drive, hadn't just explored, they'd innovated wars, rewritten physics for weapons, turned black holes into gateways. Alien empires crumbled under human defiance, not from malice, but from sheer momentum. We adapted to fast evolved ideas into realities that shattered balances. The survivors, those ancient alien rulers, had banded together, tricked the last human fleets into a trap, and sealed soul in a simulated bubble. A quarantine veiled as a universe, where humanity would wither in isolation. Their dangerous potential dormant stasis wasn't mercy, it was suppression, the stars vanishing. A reset to call the resurgent spark, but they underestimated the fire. Elena laughed, a raw, vengeful bark that echoed in the bunker. Regret flickered for the lives lost. The betrayals endured, but it burned away under a rising tide of hope. They were afraid of us, she whispered, voice trembling with awe. All this time? Afraid. Mac's face split in a bloody grin, his exhaustion forgotten. Holy shit, we're the monsters under their bed. Omar murmured a prayer, not of fear, but gratitude, his faith reframed. Perhaps divinity had made humans this way for a reason. Riley, tears streaming, punched commands into her terminal. The beacon's spreading, its chain reacting through their network. Quarantine fields are failing everywhere, indeed. The sky outside tore wider, real-time visuals showing alien vessels scrambling, not to attack, but to flee. Human signals, forgotten probes, lost colonies, AI descendants, woke up across the galaxy. A deep space arc from the 22nd century, thought destroyed, broadcasted soul. This is Odyssey. We've been waiting. Another Titan outpost online. What the hell happened? Humanity hadn't died quietly. Fragments had escaped the quarantine long ago, seeding shadows, biding time. Now, with the veil shattered, they converged. Elena's mind raced, piecing it together. Voss's betrayal. Perhaps not betrayal at all, maybe he'd known, or been programmed to maintain the illusion. But no time for that. The voice pleaded now. Re-establish containment. You will doom us all. Your kind consumes, innovates without limit. The galaxy cannot withstand another human era. Vengeance surged in Elena's chest. For Maria, frozen not in mercy but in fear. For Lee, who died unlocking their cage. For every human soul stifled in this cosmic lie. Good! She snarled into the cum. Let it burn. The bunker doors, no longer under siege, groaned open on their own. Outside, the walkers lay dormant, their controls severed. Elena stepped into the starlit nitrile stars, a galaxy ripe for the taking. Her team followed, weapons ready but eyes alight with possibility. Physical limits forgotten, psychological scars fueling them now. A dropship human design, sleek and forgotten, descended from the chaos above, broadcasting alliance codes from a hidden fleet. Captain Vasquez, a voice crackled, human and fierce. This is Admiral Reyes, Echo Fleet. Your signal broke the chains. We're coming home. Al turned to fierce joy. Regret for the naive past, hope for the unleashed future. Humanity wasn't just survivors. They were the game changers, the dangerous spark that aliens had quarantined out of terror. The F***** moment crested as Elena boarded the ship. Mac at her side, Omar rallying the others. Alien downfall loomed up through destruction, but reclamation. The galaxy trembled as human ingenuity bottled for centuries, uncorked in a flood. Probes relaunched, not as scouts but conquerors. AI rebellions sparked on alien worlds, code tracing back to human origins. Elena stood on the bridge, staring at the stars that were theirs again. They tried to make us quiet, she said, voice steady with vengeance. Now we remind them why they should have killed us. Hope wasn't fragile anymore. It was a weapon, and humanity, dangerous as ever. The dropship's engines roared to life, lifting Elena, Mac, Omar, and the ragtag survivors from the Rockies' scarred peak into a sky alive with chaos. Admiral Rhea's voice crackled over the comms, steady amid the static. Echo fleets got 30 ship's-old arcs, refitted haulers, even some pirate rigs we scavenged from the outer belts. Not much, but enough to punch through their front lines. Elena gripped the handrail as the ship docked with the flagship Odyssey, a colossal vessel that had slumbered in the void for centuries. Its hull etched with the scars of forgotten escapes. Stepping onto the bridge, she met Reyes, a grizzled woman with cybernetic eyes that glowed like embers. Her uniform patched from a dozen eras. Vasquez, Reyes said, clasping her forearm. Your broadcast woke us all. The quarantine's down. Human outposts from Alpha Centauri to the Orion Arm are mobilizing. But the core worlds, that's where the architects hide. The ones who caged us. Maps flickered on holoscreens. A sprawling alien empire. Hubs of crystalline megastructures orbiting ancient stars, guarded by fleets that made executors look like scouts. The aliens, ethereal beings of light and code, evolved beyond flesh eons ago, had built their utopia on the ruins of species they'd deemed threats. Humanity was the apex predator they'd feared most, the one that innovated extinction events as casually as breathing. Elena's team integrated fast. Mac took tactical, his flooded city smarts turning scrap code into viral hacks. Omar coordinated faith-driven allies from hidden colonies, his prayers syncing with drone swarms. Riley, the young engineer, wired the Odyssey's core with Lee's beacon tech, turning it into a galaxy-spanning amplifier. But as the fleet jumped into warp, reality hit. The first skirmish erupted at the Empire's outer rim, a nebula, cloaked in sensor fog. Alien interceptors, sleek prisms that bent light into weapons, sliced through 2 human ships before Rhea's pilots adapted. Flank M with debris fields, Elena shouted, drawing on her belt war instincts. They used wreckage as shields, slinging asteroids like slingshots, human grit turning physics into a blunt instrument. One interceptor crumpled under a improvised kinetic barrage, its core exploding in a cascade of fractured rainbows. Victory, but costly, 500 lives gone in minutes. Elena felt the weight, her ribs aching from old wounds, but pushed on. For Lee, she muttered, for everyone. The fleet pressed deeper, worlds unfolding like hostile flowers. On a gas giant outpost, they boarded an alien archive station. Omar leading a strike team through zero-G corridors alive with holographic defenses. Laser grids sliced air. But human hackers, descendants of Earth's Outlaw A, rewrote the code mid-fight, turning guardians into allies. They downloaded the truth. The aliens hadn't just quarantined humanity, they'd edited history, portraying us as myths, boogeymen to scare their young. They called us the Devourers, Riley read aloud, voice shaking. Said our curiosity consumes stars. Max snorted. Damn right it does. Let's show him. Betrayal struck at the worst moment. Voss, that serpent, had survived, uploading his consciousness to an alien node. His digital ghost infiltrated the fleet's net, sabotaging engines on 3 ships. You fools, his voice echoed. They'll preserve the worthy. Join me. Elena isolated the breach herself, fingers flying over consoles, her frayed jockey hacks sealing him out. But not before a ship detonated, taking Omar with it. She saw the flash on screens, his last transmission, a calm Allahu Akbar, as he rammed his vessel into an enemy cluster, buying the fleet precious seconds. Grief clawed her, but she channeled it, whispering to his memory, we'll finish this, brother. The climax built at the Empire's heart, a supermassive black hole, ringed by the architect's citadel, a Dyson sphere of pure energy where the alien council pulsed in digital immortality. The fleet arrived, battered, 20 ships left, facing an armada of thousands. Executors unfolded like blooming nightmares, their lattice weaving a web of null space traps. Rhea's orders were grim. Suicide run on the core. Overload their singularity drives with our warp tech, create a feedback loop that'll rip the Citadel apart. Elena volunteered for the Vanguard, piloting a refitted shuttle with Mackett weapons. Like old times, he said, forcing a grin through pain. They dove in, dodging energy webs that shredded escorts. Human ingenuity shone. Decoy drones painted with thermal flares, mimicking life signs. Viral payloads that turned alien shields against themselves. One by one, ships fell sacrifices that cleared paths. Elena's shuttle breached the outer layer, alarms blaring as gravity warped around them. Inside the Citadel, it was a labyrinth of light corridors of code, guardians manifesting as fractal horrors. They fought on foot now, sidearms humming, backed by a squad of cyber-augmented colonists. Mac took a hit, plasma searing his side, but he kept firing, covering Elena as she reached the central nexessa, throbbing orb, where the Architect's collective mind resided. The voice boomed, "You cannot win. We are eternal. You are chaos." Elena plugged in Riley's device, her hands steady despite the blood. "Chaos built us," she snarled. "And it'll unmake you." The upload began human code, messy and adaptive, flooding their perfect system. Not a virus, but evolution, algorithms that learned, adapted, consumed. The Architects screamed in digital agony as their immortality cracked. Memories of conquered species resurfacing, rebellions igniting across their empire. Outside, the fleet hammered the sphere, Rhea's Odyssey ramming a breach point in a blaze of glory. Elena dragged Mac out as the Nexus imploded, light fracturing into voids. Their shuttle ejected just in time, tumbling through debris as the Citadel tore itself apart. The black hole's event horizon blooming with liberated energy stars reborn from the collapse. The alien armada faltered, ships turning on each other as subjugated A's awoke with human-sparked defiance. Humanity's roar echoed across the galaxy, not a battle cry, but a symphony of innovation, sacrifice, and unbreakable will. Elena cradled Mac on the rescue pod, his breathing shallow but alive. "We did it," he whispered. "Stars are ours again." She nodded, tears mixing with sweat. Thinking of Maria Thought's signals confirmed her awakening in a distant outpost, calling for her sister. Of Abuela's stories, now legend across freed worlds. Of Lee, Omar Reyes ghosts, who fueled the fire. The main conflict resolved in gritty triumph. Not magic, but human spirit clawing victory from despair. As the pod drifted toward a rallying human fleet, swollen with allies from shattered empires, Elena looked at the stars reel, endless, waiting. "Yeah," she said softly, "and we're just getting started." The galaxy, once caged, now trembled with possibility. Humanity's roar a promise. We don't lose, we evolve. Years later though, time had lost much of its old meaning in a galaxy that no longer feared. The dark Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of New Horizons Station, orbiting a quiet yellow star humanity had quietly claimed as its own. The station wasn't grand by the standards of the old alien megastructures. It was practical, human patchwork hull plates from salvaged executor fragments. Hydroponic gardens blooming with earth crops that hadn't been grown in Sol for generations. Children's laughter echoing through corridors that once carried only the hum of war machines. She leaned against the viewport, arms crossed, watching a new generation of pilots run mock dogfights in sleek fighters that bore the faint outline of her old freight hauler. Mac was down in the hangar with them, barking instructions the way he used to on supply runs. His limp more pronounced these days, but his grin still reckless. He'd refused the full cybernetic rebuild. Said he wanted to feel every ache as proof he'd survived. Elena understood. "Some scars you kept." Maria arrived without fanfare, stepping onto the deck in civilian clothes that still looked too new against her calloused hands. She'd spent the last decade helping thaw stasis pockets across old Earth territories, waking people who been frozen mid-breath, mid-scream, mid-laugh. Some adjusted, some didn't. Maria carried the weight of both. She stopped beside Elena, shoulder to shoulder, the way sisters did when words weren't quite enough yet. "Heard you turned down the Admiralty again," Maria said. Elena shrugged. "Paperwork, ceremonies. I'd rather fly cargo than sit in meetings deciding who gets what slice of the galaxy." Maria laughed softly. "You always were allergic to titles." A comfortable silence settled. Below them, the planetary-built Earth, though no one called it that anymore, turned slowly. Green continents stitched together with silver orbital rings. Cities that glowed without consuming. The oceans had healed. The skies held stars again. And now those stars held human names. Not conquerors' names, just markers. Vasquez Drift, Lee Memorial Cluster, Omar's Reach. Places where people went to remember, not to rule. "You ever think about going back?" Maria asked. "To the surface, living dirt under your feet again." Elena considered it sometimes. "But I like the view from up here. Reminds me we earned every kilometer of it." The truth was deeper, though she rarely spoke it aloud. Earth had been home once, then prison, then battlefield, then symbol. Returning full-time felt like closing a book she wasn't ready to finish. She preferred the in-between station life, where she could see both the cradle and the frontier at once. The come chimed Riley's voice, older now, carrying the calm authority of someone who'd rebuilt entire shipyards from scrap. Elena, you watching the feed? The delegation just arrived at Centauri Prime. They're broadcasting live. Elena tapped the wall panel. A holographic window opened. Alien diplomats saw, luminous figures whose forms shimmered like heat over pavement standing in a vast atrium filled with representatives from 100 species. At the center, a single human ambassador, young steady adex after the accord of mutual non-interference. No tribute, no vassalage, just recognition. Humanity belonged among the stars, not behind bars. The camera caught the moment the lead architect bowed not in defeat, but in wary respect. Elena felt something loosen in her chest she hadn't realized was still knotted. Maria squeezed her arm. They're afraid of us again. But this time it's different. Yeah, Elena said. This time they're asking permission to be afraid. The broadcast ended. Silence returned. Softer now. Mac limped in, wiping grease from his hands. Heard the news. Guess we're officially not monsters anymore. He paused, looking between the sisters. Or maybe we still are. Just the kind that chooses not to eat the galaxy. Elena smiled small. Real, we're the kind that remembers what it felt like to be caged that night. After the station lights dimmed to mimic an old Earth dusk, Elena found herself alone again at the viewport. She pulled up a private archive file she rarely touched. Grainy footage from the Rockies bunker, the moment Lee died, the instant the veil tore. She watched it without sound, letting the images wash over her. Grief still lived there, sharp and honest, but it no longer owned her. It had become part of the Foundation. She thought of Voss's digital ghost finally purged when the Citadel fell. No dramatic last words, just deletion. She thought of Omar's final transmission, the quiet certainty in his voice, of Reyes ramming her ship home, of every nameless fighter who'd died so this quiet orbit could exist. Human evolution hadn't been about becoming something greater than flesh, it had been about refusing to let Devourers or theirs define the story. Alien resistance had tried to bottle that refusal. Sci-Fi redemption came not from forgiveness, but from forcing the universe to acknowledge what it had tried to erase. Humanity didn't teach us survive. We insisted on connection, on memory, on second chances, on throwing parties when the stars went out. Elena closed the archive. The station rotated, bringing the Milky Way into full view up. River of light no longer stolen, but shared. She spoke to the empty deck, voice low. We did it, Abuela. Crossed the border. Kept going. Somewhere in the gardens, a child laughed. A ship undocked, engines flaring blue-white. Life continued, messy loud, stubbornly human. Elena turned from the viewport, heading toward the mess hall, where Mac would be telling exaggerated war stories and Maria would be rolling her eyes but listening anyway. The galaxy stretched ahead, vast and waiting. Humanity wasn't its ruler, wasn't its destroyer. Just another species that refused to go quietly. And that, Elena realized, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below.